I'd like to call the committee to order, and will the clerk please take the roll? He's here.
Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
And the committee is all here. Okay. If you're here for an absentee early voting bill, we're going to wait for just a few moments until we can get a substitute printed. So we're going to move to someone who has something other than that subject matter. And do we have a sign-up sheet? So it's Survell. Senator Survell. You think by now I would know how to read my screen. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam.
This is your bill that we might like, sort of like, don't know,
Right, there you go.
have had a lot of
You're
discussions
going to
about.
love it. Yeah.
You want us to love it. Okay,
Yeah.
go ahead.
So this is 1552. This bill was brought to my attention by the Fairfax County Registrar last year, who had the idea that there was a company that was having a sale on mobile voting precincts, which was basically like an RV, a secure RV, which was kind of like what DMV uses for DMV Now. And you can put voting equipment in it, and basically 15 other states, they take this and they put the voting equipment in there and they go around and they do in-person early voting. In Virginia, obviously, if you want to vote in person early, it's like voting on election day. You have to show an ID. You have to go. They look you up in the book, and then they let you vote your ballot right there and then on the spot. And unfortunately, when they looked at the code, they realized that the code says that a polling location has to be in a building. And so the bill basically just changes that requirement from a building to a facility so that if a registrar in a locality want to have that option, they will have that option. It doesn't require anybody to do anything. There's no fiscal impact. Nobody's approached me and said there's any opposition to it. And anybody could do it if they wanted to do it, but I think it would help make things easier. There's a lot of, I think you could take one of these things to a retirement home. You could take it to a commuter lot. You could take it to a county fair. You could take it to lots of different places and try and get more people to vote early.
Okay, is there any member of the committee who has a question for the patron?
I have a question.
Senator Chase.
There we go. Thank you. I think my question would be this, Madam Chairman, is, when we're talking about being equitable, and whenever you have a mobile unit, if you're moving and it's no longer a fixed location, what's to say that you're not spending 50% of your time in a Republican district, 50% of your time in a Democratic district, or could you change that and just the entire day put it in a Republican district? I'm just thinking that maybe the fixed location might create more equitability as far as that could be abused.
Yeah, Madam Chairman, I would say that we already have that situation with regard to in-person absentee voting locations in general. So, for example, I don't know about your locality, but in Fairfax, I think we have 6 or 7 different locations. In Prince William, I think there's 4 or 5, and some people wonder about the selection of those specific locations, and so that already goes on with the existing in-person absentee voting. I think with this, the schedule would have to be discussed, debated in advance. It would have to be made public. There'd probably be an opportunity for public comment and input before any kind of locations were picked. It would, they're not just going to drive the thing out and do it. And by the way, one other thing I forgot is these things could also be used if election equipment breaks on election night, and they could drive it out to deal with a specific location that has a problem. That was another thing that was raised with me as another reason they wanted it. When Fairfax is trying to run 260 precincts at once on election day, it'd be nice to have somebody can come in an emergency if power goes out or a building breaks. They have to shut a building down or something like that.
Just as a follow-up to that question, it is critical, and this would become really in that narrow, compressed time frame when this would become really pretty high stakes where that was located. How would you presume? I mean, you alluded to that, but how would you presume how that decision would be made as to where this mobile unit would go and spend the bulk of its time?
It's just up to the electoral board, I would think. The three-person electoral board would have to set the schedule and decide where it goes.
Okay. Is there any member of the audience who wishes to speak in favor of the bill?
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Robin Lynn, Secretary of the Goochland County Electoral Board. I believe I saw this facility on display. There is a commandment against coveting. This thing costs, I believe, over $400,000. I'm extremely impressed that there are communities that can afford to have something like this. It would be wonderful if they had it available for the purpose of emergencies. If there were a precinct taken out by fire or flood or tornado, this would be the sort of facility that can go directly to that location and set up and immediately provide the services that were intended. Thank you.
Is there anybody in the audience who wishes to speak in opposition to the bill?
Madam Chair,
Senator Howell.
I just have a question because I'm having difficulty imagining this. So are we talking about, say, the equivalent of a bookmobile?
The one I saw advertised on a fire sale that the registrar showed me was like an RV. I've Googled around and looked at some other places. I've seen some that look like the size of an ambulance. So I think it depends on what the locality would choose. I don't think they all have to be $400,000 tricked out RVs, but like I think I saw one in the state of Washington. It looked like it was in the back of a large ambulance, where it has to be secure. So you have to have the equipment inside the thing, and you have to be able to lock it up.
And just another question, Madam
Senator
Chair.
Howell.
So the reason you would have such a vehicle or whatever would be in case one of your precincts went down for some reason, couldn't use it, or would it have other functions?
In part, that would be one use of it, but you could also use it before Election Day to take it, for example, I talked about county fairs, commuter lots. For example, I know VRE stations, commuter rail stations, things like that, where we currently can't house equipment in a closet or a room there and leave it there. Right now, when the in-person absentee locations I've seen in the jurisdictions I represent, they get a room for 45, 60 days, and they leave their stuff there, and they're there for 45 or 60 days taking people voting early. And this would allow you, or take it, for example, to a nursing home. You go to a retirement home where people can't get out, and you could go and collect votes there. You could do the curbside voting with those folks because you have the equipment there in the truck, invite people to come out. So it creates flexibility in terms of early voting.
Madam Chairman,
Senator Howell.
yet another question, I'm sorry.
Yes.
But couldn't you sort of skew the results by deciding where you went? Skew the results of the election depending on where you went with your mobile unit?
If you assume that people in certain locations like that all vote a certain way, in theory you could. But again, I think the same problem exists with in-person locations. I know there's been people in my county, Prince William County, that have said, well, they have 4 over on that side of the county, but only on 2 on this side of the county. Or in Fairfax, they'll say they have where they put them in specific places or convenient for only certain people, but not everybody. And this, I think, helps to actually level that playing field a little bit because it creates more flexibility and more ways for them to go around and collect more votes.
Madam Chair.
Yeah, Senator Reeves.
So, Senator Serwell, how does the registrar of your county in Fairfax decide where the absentee locations, the hard targets are going to be right now?
Today?
Yeah.
So far, they've been putting them in government. In Fairfax, they put them in government centers, police
Okay.
stations and government centers. There's one they put in a library, I think. And I think they sort of look for, in Fairfax at least, they try to have enough that are sort of regionally convenient given the traffic and the distances involved so that, there's one within 20 or 30 minutes of people. But, there's a lot of people in Fairfax that don't have access to vehicles and they need transit. I don't think there's any that are on a transit line that are convenient by transit. Prince William, I can't answer that question. I know Prince William, they have one in a DMV. They have one in the main government center, and then there's a couple up in the northern part of the county. I don't remember where they are. They're trying to do more. Usually the biggest complaint you hear about, or the biggest excuse you hear as to why the locality won't do more is because it costs money to pay the election judges to sit out there and monitor the equipment and be out there, for another 14 days. They just don't want to front that kind of money. And obviously for this, if you had a mobile voting location, you'd have to have people in it. You'd have to pay them whatever the per diem is to sit there and take the votes.
Madam Chair.
Senator Reeves.
So I think, Senator Serval, one of the concerns Senator Howell brought up is probably a valid one. And how do you prevent taking that mobile van into a place that you know is predominantly Democrat or predominantly Republican and parking it there? And I don't know if we were to approve this, could we put some legal language in there that would restrict it to almost what a fixed position would be to facilitate that, or emergency status type? I mean, in concept, I like the idea, but I think already, like Senator Howell possibly is thinking that it could be abused. So that's my concern, and I didn't know if you had thought about trying to restrict in some aspects of it from doing that.
Nobody's raised that issue with me until today, in the last 5 minutes. I put the bill in last year also, but I'm not really sure how we could do that by code. I mean, we have our electoral boards, which are required to have some partisan balance on them. They're not perfect because the governor, the party in power, gets the tie-breaking vote. But I think there's some protection there, at least for the minority, to make some noise and point things out. Which I think if they would point things out to certain people, people would make noise, and then I think there's public pressure that would be created to say, you can't do this.
Okay. Senator Rubin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a few points because I don't want to ask leading questions. But I wanted to mention when I got elected or nominated, it was during an earthquake. And of the precincts, there was one precinct that actually closed for a few hours. The others remained open after the earthquake had passed, but there was some concern about structural damage at Alexandria City Hall. So that precinct, people couldn't vote for a few hours while they were voting everywhere else. And polling hours were not extended because we didn't go to a judge and ask for an extension. So in that circumstance, the emergency is quite apparent. The other thing I wanted to say, just to add on to what Senator Serval said about right now we have satellite locations in the city of Alexandria and some of the more populous jurisdictions. There's more than one satellite location for early voting, or I should say early absentee voting, or whatever you want to call it. And I think we trust our electoral boards generally in citing polling places. And for me, in my opinion, it would be up to the electoral board, I suppose. These would be great for, the reason I'd want to have them at senior areas is because when seniors vote and they drive out to the polls and it's a wait or something, they often vote curbside, which takes more time. If it's pulled up to the curb of their senior facility and they want to go out there, if they are limited mobility in a walker or whatever, they can get to that center easier and it can be there for hours. They don't have to, an extended period of time where they don't have to wait at a polling place if it's a heavy turnout election. And the bottom line is I think we'd have to trust our electoral boards. Right now they help cite, or they do cite, our polling locations. And, with that, I'm going to move eventually when it's appropriate to pass the bill.
Okay, is that a motion? Okay. The motion's been made and properly seconded to report Senate Bill 1552. All in favor? Amanda, do I have Amanda? Oh, I have Dan's too. Oh, wait, Dan's is a yes, sorry. She's probably a yes. Amanda's not a yes. Oh, look, can you clear that for me? Sorry. Dance is a yes.
Oh, he cleared the board. You got to vote again.
Sorry. No. Chase is no. Dance is yes. Ruff is no. Okay, right.
Ayes 5, noes 9.
Great, thanks.
Before we move on to the absentee bills, I'm going to let Senator Lucas go because I think she can Would appreciate not having to sit here for a very long time. And because you're next on the list, on the sign-up sheet. I mean, I wasn't just picking you out of the crowd for fun. You were on
Well,
the sign-up
thank
sheet
you.
next.
Thank you. Madam Chair, members of the committee, I have 3 line amendments.
Okay?
Yes.
Meg is going to distribute the amendments. Would someone like to move those amendments? Motion's been made and properly seconded to adopt the line amendments. All in favor, please say aye. Opposed? Okay, so the bill as amended is before us.
Yes, Madam Chair, members of committee, and what that, in essence, what it says is including rules and regulations directing the department to produce and distribute to local, regional, and community correctional facilities information on absentee voting to be provided to all persons confined in local correctional facilities who may be eligible to vote in accordance with subsection 5 of subsection 24.2-700, and information on the process of applying for a restoration of rights and voting rights to be provided to those persons who have been convicted of a felony. Madam Chair, I received some information that said that there is 0 fiscal impact because the only thing that will be required would be to have something like this, kind of just like posted, so that people who are eligible could see that. And in essence, that's what the bill does. Makes people aware of their voting rights.
Okay, is there any member of the committee who has a question for the patron? Is there any member of the audience who wishes to speak in favor of the bill?
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Sherry Neal. I am the Intergovernmental Relations Manager for the City of Portsmouth, and we thank Senator Lucas for bringing this bill forward. And this was at the suggestion of one of our local criminal justice committees. Currently in the Code of Virginia, in 224.2700 subsection 5, it states that any person who is confined while awaiting trial or for having been convicted of a misdemeanor, provided that the trial or release date is scheduled on or after the 3rd day preceding the election, any person who is awaiting trial and is a resident of the county or city where he is confined shall, on his request, be taken to the polls on the vote of election day if the trial date is postponed and he did not have an opportunity to vote absentee. This is code. We're not creating code. The problem is that we have a lot of law enforcement, local and regional levels, who, for whatever personal reasons that they may have, are not upholding this section of the code. They don't want to provide this information, and it's just for being more transparent. You've got people in these facilities who you're trying to reform and bring them right back into being citizens, contributing. They should be able to know what their rights are. That's all it is. At the state level, as far as the being informed of your how to get your rights back once you are a convicted felon, the state has already given information. They've been directed by the General Assembly in their wisdom to give them this information. It's not being given in your local jails. It's not being given in your regional jails. And in the sense of with all of the voter suppression and stuff that's going on and the unintended voter fraud, we just think that this is just a common sense. It's very, very, very easy. We're not asking for a lot. The board already prints like a 48-page document,
Right.
81-page document for military. I don't have it in front of me. I'm sorry. I can't locate it in here right quick. So it shouldn't cost a lot, and it's just a common sense move. Virginia is also under a lot of scrutiny by the Department of Justice for lack of transparency in the jails, especially local jails. We've got one in Hampton Roads Regional Jail where we had the death of Jermichael Mitchell recently that there's going to be a lawsuit against. Justice is saying that we have abridged people's civil rights in the jails. So I just think we feel that by doing this, we would show justice that the state is trying to be more transparent. And this is what I was talking about. This is an 81-page booklet that DOC already prints. to give to people coming out of state facilities. They also give them information on how to get their rights to restored. We're not doing that at the local level. So we hope that you would see some merit in this effort and support the bill.
Madam
Thank you.
Chairman, question.
Senator Cosgrove.
Ms. Neal, was this part of Portsmouth's legislative package?
Yes, it is.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chairman and Senators. Carol Naga with the League of Women Voters. And we support this. This is just a very small token way to communicate what's available for those who are incarcerated and being ready to be released. And we know it's inconsistent throughout the state for the regional jurisdictions. We are invited in where I live to go into the jail and counsel those on registration, voting absentee if they're there for misdemeanors, and before they're sentenced even. So this simple piece of paper is all that this is. And maybe it would inspire some other regional adult detention centers to do more.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody in the audience who wishes to speak in opposition to the bill? Any member of the committee? Any member of the committee who has any comments or observations or concerns?
Move the report.
Okay, the motion has been made and properly seconded to report Senate Bill 1202. All in favor, please vote.
Dance. Sproul.
Ayes 5, noes 8.
Thank you, Senator Lucas.
Thank you for your consideration.
Okay. Next, Senator Obenchain.
Madam Chairman, I think I have hopefully a simple bill. Every once in a while, there is an issue as to residency of a candidate for office and or other litigation involving a campaign. And the statute right now says if the candidacy, if there's a suit, the forum, the venue for the litigation is the residency of the candidate, the place where the candidate resides. Well, the problem is some of these lawsuits involve disputes over where the candidate resides. So do you file it in the locality where the candidate said they reside, or do you file it in the jurisdiction where the candidate is alleged to have resided? And there is actually a case that I don't believe this would impact, but a case that had been working its way through the courts. And this isn't really an issue, but it highlights the need to clarify the statute. And what this bill does is it basically says the locality where venue is going to exist is the locality where the candidate claimed in his or her filed paperwork to have resided. And typically, that's the locality where they ran for office, which seems to make sense. If a candidate claims that he lives in the city of Harrisonburg but lives in Rockingham County and is elected in the city of Harrisonburg and the election results are challenged, it ought to be in the city of Harrisonburg where he or she claimed that they resided. So this is simply to clean up an ambiguity in the statute that involves a situation that probably wasn't considered at the time that the statute was adopted.
Okay, is there any member of the committee who has a question for the patron? Is there Senator Chafin?
Yes. So, Senator Obenchain, this would be kind of like almost like a venue issue where you have the contest being made. That's where the alleged infraction might have occurred. Am I right?
It's where the case will be heard in that court. If I filed my paperwork saying I'm a resident of the city of Harrisonburg. It's where I listed my residency on my filed paperwork.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
If I listed it in Rockingham County, I would have never gotten on the ballot in the city of Harrisonburg to begin with.
Any other member of the committee who has a question? Is there anybody in the audience who wishes to speak in favor of the bill? Is there any member of the audience who wishes to speak in opposition to the bill? Okay. The motion's been made and properly seconded to report Senate Bill 1781. All in favor, please vote aye.
Ayes 13, no 0.
And of course, that candidate will have the right to file for summary judgment.
Of course. I regret that we can't actually have a long banter about that right here.
Thank you.
Okay. Next on the sign-up sheet is Senator Stewart. We're going to hear Senator Stewart. Now, let me just ask, let me just make an observation. What we have before us today are 6 bills that affect early voting, absentee voting, address the statutory list of excuses for absentee voting. We have had a long discussion over the summer with folks who have brought these bills before, myself included. We have had a lot of discussions with the stakeholders. We've talked about resources. In an effort to try to come up with a vehicle to move forward, we have a plan, I believe, to roll in a number of them into one vehicle. Senator Stewart's is different enough. He would like to have his heard separately. So we're going to hear yours and then plow ahead from there. How's that?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes.
Madam Chair, I've got Senate Bill 1206. And the reason I don't want to be rolled into the others is because mine is different.
Okay.
Mine is just a straight early voting bill. And it allows you to vote from the 30th day prior to the election through the day of the election. One of the things that seems the most ridiculous to me is the absentee ballot system. We have to go and sign a form and give a reason why we can't be at the polls on that particular day. Well, first of all, I don't think I should have to tell the government where I'm going to be on a particular day or give them any reason why I can't be there. If I can't be there, it's my right to vote. And I'd like to exercise it. The more I go to the polls, the more I see people who are situated in all walks of life. And you go in and you're waiting in line and the line is an hour and a half long and they go, I just can't wait anymore. I got to leave. You know, I've got to get to work. I've got to go open my business. I've got to go do this. And I'll try to come back later. The part of the world where I live and represent, most people get on the train to go to work at 4:30 in the morning and they get home at 7:30 in the evening. It is more and more and more complicated for people to get to vote. And I think we should, and I get that the registrars have a little bit of difficulty with doing this, but here's what it does. During their normal work hours during the week, 9 to 5, and on Saturdays from 12 to 4, which is an additional time, you can go into the registrar's office, present your ID, and you can vote. I firmly believe that this will eliminate a lot of confusion. It will eliminate a lot of these provisional ballots because the registrars have time to deal with it and allow people to vote and make sure that they are a person who should vote. And we're not disenfranchising voters by packing them into a line on one day, many of which can't even get there. I mean, I think it has a lot to do with why voter turnout's so poor. And I just don't understand why we don't let people vote. And I think this is simple. You don't have to give an excuse. You don't have to give a reason. You don't have to sign a form. You go to the registrar's office, you show your ID, and you vote. And you get counted. And I really hope you all will support this.
So, Senator Stewart, I will tell you that I love it. I love the simplicity.
And I hope you'll vote for it.
And I think a number of the people here do. The challenge that we have run into in having the discussions with a number of the folks who will have to be on the other side of implementing this is that not that we don't love your bill, but we've come up with a practical compromise because, as I have said about P&E, this whole committee has become, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. So what we do here, at least this session, has been a lot of good and a little bit of perfect. Perfect would be voting something out that we could actually implement right away, that we had all the resources for, that our registrars had all the time and bandwidth and ample resources with people and locations,
Well, Madam
which we
Chair,
don't have.
And I get the rest, but the registrars are there every day anyway.
Right.
They're in the office every day, and in most cases, they're preparing for elections. So the additional effort means you've got to have some ballots over here printed and ready to go. And a person walks in and says, hey, I want to vote today. Here's my driver's license, and you let them vote. I don't think it's any significant challenge to it.
Right.
And I think we could work through that.
And I'll just finish the second part, what I was
Sorry.
about to say, and that is
Sorry.
that we have a vehicle, remarkably, and again, we aren't supposed to focus on what the other body does, but there is a vehicle that came out of the other body, and it would be wonderful if we could actually report something out this year. So what I'm endeavoring to do is take a similar vehicle, and all of these actually are relatively similar, and they work quite nicely. In fact, Senator Howe's bill is very, very similar to what was reported out on the House side, which is why we were attempting to roll all of these into one vehicle that we could report out. So while we'd love to have you rolled in and be a co-patron, a chief co-patron on that vehicle, which would be ideal, because yours is actually very, very similar as well to the other vehicle. And then what we had attempted to do, which we think will resolve the intervening issues of how do we actually help our registrars implement this, is that in the intervening time between now and when it actually is enacted, we have some opportunity for the registrars and the stakeholders to do some work on it over the year and actually study this and figure out how are we actually going to implement it.
I understand,
So,
Madam Chair.
so that was our effort to actually report something out that would have an impact, would be meaningful, and could get out of both bodies.
I appreciate that, and I respect what you all are doing. I think my bill's better. I think we have disenfranchised voters long enough. I think the registrars can handle it. And if I didn't think they could handle it, I wouldn't be here, quite frankly.
Right.
And I'll work with them and help them any way I could. I just ask for a vote up or down.
Right, I know, and
That's all
I
I'm
respect that. Not everybody wants their bill rolled in, so for purposes of people in the audience who are not understanding how that works,
I believe in
an up or
this.
down vote, right.
I believe in this. I believe this is the right way to go. And I really think we need to take this leap now.
Okay, Senator Howell.
I just wanted to say I totally agree with Senator Stewart. It's the way we should be going. We've had this whole rigmarole with having to give excuses. Now we're trying to get rid of the excuses, but we still have to go through the absentee voting process. And it is, I think, actually more onerous to the registrars that way than just letting people come in and vote on site. So I'm going to support his bill.
Is there anybody in the audience who wishes to speak in favor of the bill? Good afternoon and welcome.
Good afternoon. I'm Becca Saxon with the VEA, and we support this bill.
Thank you.
Yes, the League of Women Voters supports the bill, and Senator Stewart didn't mention the Sunday afternoon voting, which would be another plus.
Is there anybody who wishes to speak in opposition?
I'm sorry, Senator Vogel, Chairman.
That's all right.
I am speaking primarily because registrars work very long and very hard, particularly in the run-up to elections. They work late, they work early. And they're frequently in their offices on Saturdays and Sundays trying to get the stuff done that they didn't have time to do during the week. Putting an additional burden on those ladies and gentlemen to invite voting on Saturdays and Sundays, I think is a very big burden on the registrars, and I don't think they're going to be able to do that. It's also going to cost a lot, and so this needs to have a physical impact. Thank you.
State your name and who
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Clarabelle Wheeler, Vice Chair of the State Board of Elections. I'm sorry. Thank you. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. We do, and I apologize.
Walt?
Madam Chair,
Senator Sproul?
I want to know, was she speaking for herself or was she speaking for the board?
No, I'm speaking for myself.
You didn't say that. That's why I asked, you know.
I'm so sorry. Clarabelle Wheeler, Vice Chair of the State Board of Elections, and I'm speaking as a voter in Virginia. I'm not speaking for anyone under any auspices other than I have a lot of friends who are registrars,
Yes, ma'am.
and
Thank
I
you so
see
much.
how hard they work.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Good afternoon and welcome.
Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be before you all again. Walt Latham, Registrar in York County and President of the Association. We appreciate, or I appreciate Senator Stewart's confidence in us. And it's always nice to have those words of kindness showered on us. We still, as we have expressed through memos and things of that nature, just concerns about resources that are available. And the Sunday voting would be a change from what we've done now. So that would be a significant impact as far as staffing and availability. And we anticipate a greater number of people participating. So we would have to be ready to go all the time in order to make sure we successfully implement this. So we would like for there to be some analysis of what kinds of resources would be necessary, as well as the discussion you had previously about the mobile voting unit that one of the companies has. Would probably be a similar type of conversation we'd have about what would be these locations for additional voting. So all of that stuff really needs to be fleshed out through some kind of a study or whatever you are anticipating to make sure that we don't get an old empty bank or something, and then 2 years later it turns out they're all in Republican areas or all in Democratic areas. And we did it without thinking and making sure we were doing this with equal access in mind.
Madam Chair,
Senator Sproul?
comment, I'm curious. The elections office, y'all are never satisfied. It seems like to me that's a good bill, but if there's a problem, I would have loved to have seen, say, this will work if we had this will work if we don't do something, if we do this. This will work if you give us more money. This will work if you give us more manpower. But y'all always come and say no, 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 but you never give it any solution. That's a good idea, but to implement that, give us some, say, hey, this will work if you give us some more money, if you do this and do that. Y'all ever say that? Y'all always say no, no, no.
May I respond?
Please
Yes,
do.
please.
We've never said no, as far as I know. What we believe, as with a lot of stuff that you all do, it's a matter of policy. If you want to move the election to the middle of July, we'll do it then. What we're here to tell you is y'all need to figure out what you want us to do, and then we'll do it. But I don't want us to be in Florida or look like we're in Florida. I'm sorry to run Florida down. I just don't want to look like we don't know what we're doing. And I'm saying, please figure out what you want us to do and how you want us to do it, so that the thing that I do for my livelihood doesn't lead to embarrassing questions at Christmas get-togethers about why didn't you plan ahead of time. That's all I'm saying.
Thank you, sir. But it also looks kind of bad when a member constantly, from time to get up and speak for himself or herself, and if we don't know that we think that person is speaking for the board, previous lady who spoke before you, and I was wondering, was that the board, but she was speaking for herself. But if you don't know that and she speaks, and if she doesn't say, or you don't say that I'm speaking for myself, for the board, that's my concern, because we up here, the last lady who spoke before you, she was speaking for herself. She happened to be on the board, but she was speaking for herself. If I didn't ask that question, you would have thought she was speaking for the board.
I can't account for who other people speak for. So I can only answer for myself, and sometimes I wonder about that. But I'm just telling you what my opinions are.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak on this bill?
Second.
Okay. So the motion's been made and properly seconded to report Senate Bill 1206. All in favor, please vote.
I thought you said you were going to vote for my bill.
I want to vote for your bill, but I can't report out two vehicles. That's my concern. I want to report out an early voting bill that you're rolled into and where you're a chief co-patron, Senator Stewart.
I understand, Madam Chair. I just wondered if I misheard something. Was all.
Now, I love your bill. I love your bill, and I want to vote for it. Okay.
I love your bill, but I can't vote for it.
I want to do for this subject what we did for redistricting, one vehicle.
I understand.
Because it's really confusing and a little bit of a tortured process to get everybody to agree. And I would welcome your being a chief co-patron and rolling yours in, because yours is actually substantially similar to the vehicle that we're going to roll in.
Madam Chair, thank you for your courtesies and your consideration as members of the committee.
Thank you,
I enjoyed
Senator
being
Stewart. Okay, Senator Spruill, you have 1026, which is the low bill number of the 6 early voting bills. And I'm going to ask for a motion that we roll in. Meg, I don't have my list right in front of me. That we roll in, not Senator Stewart's bill, because Senator Stewart didn't want to be rolled in, but we roll in Senate Bill 1035, Senate Bill 1075, Senate Bill 1198, and then, yeah, you're going to strike 1672. Okay, so we're going to roll those bills in. Would someone please make that motion?
Also moved.
Okay, the motion's been made and properly seconded to roll those bills in to Senate Bill 1026, which is Senator Spruill's bill, and Senator Spruill.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for the substitute. Now, the new bill is the absentee voting by mail.
I'm sorry, Senator Spruill, I made a mistake.
I apologize.
All in favor of rolling those bills together, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. So now it's properly before us, roll together.
Now, the new bill states absentee voting by mail with an excuse that's available beginning 45 days prior to the election. Application having to be submitted by the 7th day immediately preceding the election. This is unchanged from the current law. Absentee voting in person with an excuse is available beginning 45 days prior to the election and ending on the second Friday immediately preceding the election. Absentee voting in person without an excuse is available beginning on the second Saturday immediately preceding the election and ending on the Saturday immediately preceding the election. Bills is delayed until this election beginning with the November 2020 election. The state board is required to report by December the 1st, 2019 on the procedure and instruction it comes up with to carry out this absentee voting schedule and make any recommendation for legislation that might be necessary for implementing the provision of this bill. That's it, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Spruill. What we've attempted to do is take the components of the bill, and this is similar to Senator Howell's bill and very similar to Senator Stewart's bill in some way, give us a vehicle. And in fact, it is a vehicle that we believe will survive the whole process. And again, we are not supposed to comment on what the other body does, but if you want something to live, it becomes relevant what the other body does. So, with that little additional context for this, I would like to ask, is there any member of the committee that has a question or a comment?
Madam
Senator
Chairman,
Cosgrove.
I have a comment.
Yes.
I'd wait for Senator Spruill's attention first. So I would just say I have never voted for one of these bills before, ever. My entire time in the House of Delegates.
Ever.
My entire time in the Senate. But this is my brother Lionel Spruill, and I'm going to vote for his bill.
Yes. See, there was a reason to kill Richard's bill. Right there. Right there. Okay. Is there anybody in the audience who wishes to speak in favor of the bill?
I'm sorry.
Good afternoon, Madam Chairman and committee members. My name is Alexandria Bratton, and I'm the program manager for the Virginia Civic Engagement Table. The right to vote is fundamental to our democracy, and expanding the opportunity and access to participate in our democracy is essential. We support this legislation. Excuse me.
Thank you. Good afternoon again, Robin. Welcome.
Madam Chair, Robin Lind, speaking on behalf of the Virginia Electoral Board Association. We have been in favor of no excuse absentee voting, I think, for more than 50 years. I can't remember exactly, but I felt compelled to speak because seeing the distinguished senator and the other distinguished senator agreeing on something, I felt like it was somewhat of an earthquake, and I wanted to... Thank you, Madam Chair.
I'm Alex.
Good afternoon.
Cintron.
Welcome.
Hello. I'm Alex Cintron. I am the president of the University of Virginia Student Council, and we support this legislation.
Thank you. Walt, I was waiting for you.
I'm here. And I am very excited about the idea of a study and delayed enactment. So, Senator Spruill.
We did that for you.
This is what we've been waiting for. So we appreciate this, and we like the idea of actually studying it, making sure that we have a goal, a plan, and then we implement it.
See, every now and then, a prince rides in on his horse and saves the day. And it happened. I know that the registrars never thought that would happen, but it did.
We've come to have low expectations, and we're really easy to please, but we're especially pleased that it was Senator Spruill who delighted us.
Yes. Yay!
Madam Chairman, I do have one question.
Yes, Senator Cosgrove.
If you're a Virginia Tech fan, we had the UVA president, you know, what, now I'm conflicted. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I understand. I feel your pain. Okay. So we've worked really hard to try to create this balance, and we thank you, Senator Spruill, for carrying it,
Madam
and for
Chairman.
everybody who was gracious enough to be rolled in and be a chief co-patron, except for Senator Stewart,
Madam Chairman.
who we still love. Yes, Senator Cosgrove.
It would be my honor to move to report this bill.
For the first time ever.
For the first time ever, with all of the patrons brought on as chief co-patrons.
Okay. Yes, it is. Yes, Madam, it is also your bill. Okay, so the motion's been made and properly seconded to support Senate Bill 1026, or to pass Senate Bill 1026, along with all of its chief co-patrons. All in favor, please vote aye. And your bill reports unanimously.
That's 14.
Madam Chair, oh my Lord Jesus, thank you so much.
You are so welcome. Thank you, Senator Spruill.
Madam Chair, I have a 1664. Give me a
Okay, plow ahead.
1664. Campaign, this legislation is a private issue. It would prohibit the Board of Election from releasing personal names and address who have applied for an absentee ballot. Campaigning usually send a volunteer to the Board of Election to collect a list of names and address of persons who have applied to receive the absentee ballots. Most times the reason because someone is traveling out of town, they are physically unable to get to the polls they have because of health issues. As we have seen in neighbors states, North Carolina especially, these lists have fallen in the hands of the wrong people who can use them to intimidate, manipulate the voters, or who will possibly put people, especially elders, in jeopardy. What happened here, Madam Chairman, is that let's say someone will go down to the electoral board and get a copy of names of people who asked for them. And then they will go to the homes and try to persuade them, instead of saying that they are helping them to fill a form out, send them in. They are actually guide them how to vote the way they want to. No particular party, doesn't matter which side was doing it, is that when I'm doing it and they get my list They go to all these elderly citizens to help them fill out their forms the way they want to instead of family members. That's all it's stopping that. There's no problem. They can check and find out exactly how many, but to give the names of the person who apply, they can go to their homes. That's it.
Okay, is there any member of the committee who has a question for the patron? Is there any member of the audience who wishes to speak in favor of the bill? Is there any member of the audience who wishes to speak in opposition to the bill? Okay, the motion's been made and properly seconded to report Senate Bill 1664. All in favor, vote aye. Who's left?
Ayes 5, noes 9.
Okay, the bill fails to pass.
John, I thought you said you love me. Thank you, ma'am. Thank
Okay.
you so much, y'all.
And Senator Locke, I apologize profusely that you had to wait so long because you were next on the list. But then once we took the early voting bills, we had to take them all.
That's okay. Sproul just usurped his authority.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I have Senate Bill 1447. And this legislation requests repeal of the photographic identification requirement for Virginians to cast their vote. Virginia is the second hardest state in which to vote, according to a study released in 2018 from Northern Illinois University. The study analyzed 33 different variables dealing with registration and voting laws. And as all of you are aware, Virginia passed this legislation in 2012, requiring qualified voters in Virginia to present a photograph identification card in order to vote. This proposal was meant to combat voter fraud, but research has shown almost no evidence of such voter fraud exists. This legislation would remove a barrier to voting and protect the right to vote for many Virginians, and instead require a valid Virginia driver's license, a valid United States passport, or any other identification issued by the Commonwealth or one of its political subdivisions of the United States, any valid student ID issued by any institution of higher education or private school in the Commonwealth, any valid employee identification and containing a photograph of the voter and issued by an employer of the voter, or a copy of a current utility bill, bank statement, government check, paycheck, or other government document containing the name and address of the voter, which is what existed prior to the photo ID law that was passed. And that's the bill.
Okay, is there any member of the committee who has a question for the patron? Is there any member of the audience who wishes to speak in favor of the bill? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Madam Chairman. My name is Grinley Johnson. I'm the Deputy Secretary of Administration, and we are in favor of this bill.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Is there anybody who wishes to speak in opposition to the bill?
Move to report.
Okay, the motion's been made and properly seconded to report Senate Bill 1447.
Madam Chairman, I have a substitute motion.
Yes, Senator Cosgrove.
To PBI.
Okay, substitute motion is to pass by indefinitely. It's been made and properly seconded. All in favor, please vote aye.
Yeah, no.
Do I have anybody's proxy? I have Eben, and that would be a no for Eben. Okay.
Ayes 8, noes 6.
Okay, bill's passed by.
Thank you.
Senator Peterson.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Oh, Senator Locke, did you have a bill that you wished for us to strike? You want me to make the motion? Okay. It was 1672.
1672.
Yeah, I'm going to ask for a motion at the request of the patron that we strike Senate Bill 1672. The motion's been made and properly seconded to strike that bill. All in favor, please vote aye. Thank you.
That's 13, no zero.
Okay, Senator Peterson.
Madam Chair and members of the committee, let me start with Senate Bill 1146. That's the broader bill, so if that was to pass, that would render mostly moot the other bill. Senate Bill 1146, and first of all, Senator Eben asked me on his way out the door if he could roll his Senate Bill 1496 into my 1146.
Okay, I was going to ask about that. So we're allowed, you're fine with rolling them in and taking them both up together?
Sure.
Perfect. Okay, so the motion's been made and properly seconded to roll Senator Eben's bill into Senate Bill 1146. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, so now the bill is properly before us, rolled together.
Thank you. Madam Chair, members of the committee, this is actually a very simple bill. It's got a little bit of text to it, but it really boils down to the following idea that political contributions from one source to one candidate in one election cycle should be capped at $10,000. It can be $5,000 if it's applied to a primary race and then $5,000 to a general, but over the course of the cycle, from one individual donor, whether it's a person or corporation, or political action committee, to one candidate, it is capped at $10,000. I've had variations of this bill for years. I figure the easiest way to do it is just to boil it down to the most simple numbers. 10,000 is a very easy number to remember. I don't have a cost of living adjustment like I know the federal equivalent does. People want to put that on, I could care less. But I think I'm a huge believer in simplicity, both in my own life and in my intellectual proclivities, and I think 10,000 is very simple. And I think, frankly, I know there are First Amendment issues at play, and I think when you contribute $10,000, you have exercised that First Amendment right, and then you can take up your First Amendment exercise in other ways, such as knocking on doors or making phone calls or writing letters to the editor. So that's the bill. It's really not more complicated than that, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Well, I'm just going to ask you a question about that First Amendment.
Sure.
Your speech right, your right to contribute, your right to participate, your right to
Right.
campaign on somebody's behalf. I know that there are people who have worked on your campaign or my colleagues' campaigns who have given personal time, whether it's making phone calls or going door to door, that far exceeds $10,000 in their personal time, if you had to consider what they gave of their time. And we wouldn't cap that. We wouldn't say there's a limit to how much you can give and volunteer of your time. You might say there's a limit to how much you can give in an in-kind contribution. That would apply in your case. You would cap that at $10,000. You might say,
Well, it's a monetary contribution.
but an in-kind contribution for purposes of your campaign finance report, if somebody has an event for you and they pay for it, that would
Okay, fair
apply.
enough.
You'd be
Yeah.
limited. Like if somebody wanted to have a big event for you, for example,
Right.
they'd be capped at $10,000. They wouldn't be allowed, let's say, 2 or 3 people went together and wanted to have an event for you. They'd have to divide that up so that if they
Right.
were having a big campaign event for you, they couldn't pay for all the food or all those things. It would be capped. So the point is,
That would be a first world issue, but
it's definitely a first world issue. It's definitely a Northern Virginia, your district issue. I promise.
Okay.
But the point is, I'm just making this observation for you, because this is something I've dealt with for a long time in lots of different contexts as this issue comes up over and over, and that is this sort of equity and fairness and so the ethics of where do you draw the line and at what point do you restrict somebody's ability to participate? Because a lot of people don't want to go door to door. They don't want to give speeches. They're incredibly quiet and shy. They don't want to participate, but they'll write a check. And so in that regard, at what point do you say, no, you're no longer allowed to engage? Because the person who makes 1,000 phone calls, we wouldn't say to them, okay, well, now you've hit your 10,000 limit. Anyway,
Now,
I just
do
wanted to
get
make that
res-
observation.
Well,
Yes, you
and
certainly
I
can.
can respond. I say, Madam Chair, you can run for Congress on the grounds of repealing the federal law and make that your issue, and I think you'd have a forum for doing that. But I think the federal law we've had for 40, 45 years, you probably know better than I do.
Right.
And I don't think anyone's ever proposed revoking it.
Well, I'll make
so
an
obviously they're
observation
happy with it.
about the federal law, and this is
Okay.
something that was really interesting. When people had the opportunity to make contributions of greater than the hard dollar limits right now, people made those contributions. And once the hard limits got more and more restrictive, all people did was come up with clever ways to go around that. Outside groups, there was this massive proliferation of outside groups. All these ways to go around it. Then 527s, then we close the loophole on 527s. It's always a way to sort of force the money out. So I just wanted to make that observation because it's a practical consideration.
Madam Chair, can I make one point and then I'm happy? I was 17 when they changed the age from 18 to 21 for drinking alcohol. You're going to be shocked to hear that people used to go and buy us beer, and then from 18 to 21 we kept drinking. Okay? People find a way around every law.
They absolutely do.
There's no exception for this. But the point is, sometimes you make a law because it's the right thing to do, and some people will find ways around. I accept that.
Right.
But the point is, I think this is the right thing to do. That's all I can say.
Well, and you're not prohibiting with respect to individuals because that, in some ways, I'm mischaracterizing some of the implications because when we restricted what parties could do, then it left parties. So it's not exactly the same thing because yours is just a flat cap. But the point is,
Madam
there's
Clerk.
some similarities. Senator Chase.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, Senator Peterson, I agree that we need some type of limitation, but I'll tell you what happens having worked for 3 congressmen is that these limits force our folks to go outside of Virginia to get campaign funds. And having worked for 3 congressmen, that's what they do. Instead of campaigning in Virginia, they spend all this time, energy, and effort going outside of Virginia to get those monies. And I've seen it firsthand, and I appreciate so much your intent, but the reality is that's really what happens. And so I had another bill that addressed outside campaign contributions because I have a concern that we have too much outside money coming into Virginia. But the unintended consequences of your bill, in my opinion, is that it's going to create more opportunities for outside funds from outside of Virginia to come in and influence our elections, and that I am extremely opposed to. Thank you.
Okay. Is there any other member of the committee who has an observation or wishes to say something? Senator Edwards.
Madam Chair, I think you had previously alluded to the fact that the federal laws are just like a sieve. If you want to give $1 million to person running for Congress, you can give, $5,000 to each X numbers of PACs. I think it's $5,000 per PAC, something like that. And then each PAC then gives to the candidate. Or there's so many ways and loopholes around it. I don't know how you clean up the federal election campaign laws, and I think if we go down this route, that's what's going to happen, unless you just say outlaw PACs. I'm not sure that's going to be done either.
Well, again, Senator Edwards, the federal law has been on the books for 45 years. No one's ever suggested repealing it.
That's because everybody's afraid to, but they ought to be repealed and start all over again. What they do is give money to all these PACs. If you want to give $1 million to one candidate, you can do it. If you chop up a whole bunch of checks into all these different PACs, isn't that right, Madam Chair? Who's more of an expert than I am in federal law.
Okay. Is there anybody in the audience who wishes to speak in favor of the bill? Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Anna Scholl with Progress Virginia. I think the issue that Senator Peterson and Senator Eben are trying to address here is that this only works, our democracy only works, if people believe that the decisions that you all are making here are made with voters' best interests at heart. And while you all work hard every day and with no sort of malintent, I think you all know that too many voters believe that elected officials are more accountable to the people who are writing big checks and the special interests who are funding campaigns than they are necessarily to the voters who are making decisions at the ballot box about who to send here. And there is no perfect solution, but I think Senator Peterson's proposal here is a step forward to tackling a really serious issue and making sure that voters have faith that the decisions that are being made here are about them and for them, which I think is one of the most important investments that we can make in our democracy, in this 400-year-old body, to make sure that it continues to function with the people back home first and foremost in your minds.
Great. Thank you. Good afternoon. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members of the committee, I'm Rita Davis, counsel to Governor Northam. And on behalf of Governor Northam, I'm here to speak in favor of the bill. Senate Bill 1146 will help preserve the integrity of Virginia's electoral process and negate a perception that instead of being a government for the people, by the people, it is instead a government for the few, by the few. For those reasons and those espoused by Senator Peterson, the governor urges the committee to report the bill. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody in the audience who wishes to speak in opposition to the bill?
Madam Chair, can I make one last, and
Of
I
course.
apologize for trespassing on your time. We don't allow ourselves to accept contributions during the time we're in session. Now, that is, there are probably indirect ways to get around that, probably indirect ways to receive money. So I understand everything that's said about this as a problematic process, but I do think you need to lay down markers, and I think this is a simple marker. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Senator DeSteff.
Madam Chair, Senator Peterson, I believe there's nothing stopping any candidate for saying that they won't accept checks larger than a certain amount. I've seen it in like 6 or 7 of the last campaigns that I've worked with folks on where they've put limits of what they'll accept for contributions, and they followed that. So if any member feels that they want to limit themselves to include the governor, if the governor would like to limit himself to $10,000 or a member wants to limit themselves to $5,000, I've not seen anywhere in our laws where we're restricted to do that. So right now, if we want the ability to do that, we can absolutely do it today. Am I correct?
Yes. Okay, so the motion's been made and properly seconded to report Senate Bill 1146.
Madam Chairman, before we take the vote, I think it needs to be said, the governor says the administration comes up and supports the vote. Well, one thing we always learn is lead by example. I haven't seen the example from the administration to this point, so I'm not going to support the bill.
Okay, thank you. All in favor, please vote aye.
Ayes 3, noes 11.
Ayes 3, noes 11. Bill fails to report. Thank you, Senator
Alrighty.
Peterson.
I have one more bill, Madam Chair. And this is a bill that I've also brought, I think this is the 3rd year. This would prohibit 1114, I apologize. 1114 is a very simple bill. It's a concept I've brought forward for the last 3 years. It simply says that public service corporations cannot make donations to candidates. I will tell you right now, a public service corporation, by definition, has a state-chartered monopoly. It's a different entity than any other company, any other individual. And as such, I don't think it's appropriate that they should be making donations to the General Assembly any more so than if I'm trying a case in front of a judge, I'll be making a donation to his reelection campaign. And by the way, I'm licensed in Maryland. They do have elected judges. So I just think it's not appropriate. Y'all can make whatever comebacks you want. I'm sure there's some interest group that donated to me. But again, they're not a state-chartered monopoly. So that's kind of where I am with that one. I think we've heard this one before, but I'd appreciate your support. Thanks.
Okay, is there anybody in the audience who wishes to speak in favor of this bill? Good afternoon, welcome.
Good afternoon. Bob Shippey with Sierra Club. We support the bill.
Thank you. Is there anybody? Oh,
Hi, good afternoon. Lizzie Hilton with Clean Virginia. I just wanted to say quickly, we really wholeheartedly support the bill. Just to, kind of add on a little bit more about it, this is something that is already exists in 25 states, that they have laws preventing, these regulated public service corporations that have monopolies from giving directly to their regulators. So this is, we think a really, really important in terms of really building public trust. And just to kind of want to emphasize, this exists in a lot of places. And we think it's an important move. So thank you.
great, thank you. Is there anybody here who wishes to speak in opposition to the bill?
Madam Chairman.
Senator Cosgrove.
While it's not a regulated monopoly, there is another organization that is actually overseen solely by the General Assembly, and that would be Omega Protein. So maybe we ought to throw them in there, since actually their product is under the sole
John, you
authority
vote for the
of
bill and pass it
General
out, or you
Assembly.
can make that amendment on the floor.
No,
Well,
I'm just saying, I'm
okay.
surprised that that's not here. So anyway, that's fine. I moved to PBI.
Madam Chair.
Yeah, okay, the motion's been made to PBI. Is there, okay, sorry, Senator Chase.
I just had a quick question for the patron, if
Yes,
that's
ma'am.
okay. My understanding, because I was trying to, in my constitutional amendment, limit outside contributions from outside of Virginia, but there was a federal court case that said that money is considered free speech. So is this, in your mind, limiting free speech by not allowing Dominion employees who have a PAC to donate to candidates just like everyone else? Is it
Well, the first,
exercising?
short answer is yes, there are First Amendment issues, absolutely. But like I said, we have restrictions. For example, Dominion employees can't donate to me money to me right now. Not that they necessarily want to, but during session, you can't donate. Under federal law, you're subject to certain limits. So giving money is certainly political speech. However, it is subject to limitations which have been held to be constitutional. I'm not sure, and there are different dominions, whether or not it would be a Virginia company or even a Delaware company, so there might be an issue there. But the bottom line is I have no doubt that this law would be compliant with the First Amendment, just the same as if you have elected judges that, again, if I'm trying a case in front of a judge in Maryland or in Maryland anyway, I can't make a donation to them right before they're about to rule on my motion for summary judgment. So.
And so just to, can
Had
I
to
bring up
work that in.
just a follow-up question?
Senator Chase.
I mean, I think my concern here, and I know a lot of people are surprised to hear me say this, but why are we picking on Dominion? We have a number of different special interest groups that donate to legislators. And so my question is, do you think it's appropriate to single out one particular organization, and if so, why?
It's a class of entities. Look, if Dominion Resources folded and reconstituted under a different name, which is what VEPCO did years ago, it would have nothing to do with Dominion. I mean, basically, it's whomever sits in a position where they hold a state-run utility. We have water, gas, electricity. We have utilities that provide these basic services, and we charter monopolies in order to make sure that the service is provided. If it's a separate entity, like, say, Newport News Shipbuilding, that's different because they're out in the open market. Or, say, whatever company you want to think of. This is targeted at state-run utilities. Now, if somebody wants to make an argument there's another class of corporations or another class of entities that are influencing the political process that have a similar state-run monopoly, sure. But I think this one's unique, and listen, we didn't all just crawl out from under a rock. We've been around here the last couple of years and seen the legislation, so that's why it says what it says.
Okay. The motion has been made and properly seconded to, is this motion PBI? To PBI. All in favor? Please vote.
Ayes 8, no 6.
Okay, Bill's passed by.
All right.
Thank you,
so
Senator
much.
Peterson. Okay, next on the sign-up sheet is Senator Barker. I'm glad you brought your computer. I hope you got some work done while you've been sitting here all this time.
I got some population numbers for you anytime you want them. So.
Oh, good. I'm eagerly awaiting that
I'm
information.
sure you are. This bill is Senate Bill 1281. It's a very straightforward bill. What it does, it says that if someone has a Virginia driver's license, they go to vote, they have their picture on the driver's license, they match with the picture, that it shouldn't make any difference whether or not the license is still valid or whether it's expired. Put this in because I have a couple who are in my district who went to vote last November. They're in their 90s, still live in a house in Woodbridge in Prince William County. The husband, however, I think he was 95 at the time, and he had allowed his driver's license to expire because he wasn't driving anymore. His wife had maintained her license. She was allowed to vote. He was not allowed to vote, and actually was not offered a provisional ballot, which he was supposed to have been offered in that situation. It shouldn't make any difference whether someone has the right to drive if they have a picture that was produced by Virginia for their driver's license, and they match that picture. So what this would do is basically state that it doesn't have to be a valid driver's license, just has to be a Virginia driver's license.
Okay. Is there any member of the committee who has a question for the patron?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Madam Chairman.
Senator Edwards.
This is exactly the same argument we've made many times before. I'm glad to see you have a real live example that happened over and over again.
Yeah.
And you're absolutely right. Isn't that correct?
I would say that that is correct, and I would say that the people who are most impacted by this are our elderly population. And we should not be disenfranchising the elderly population simply because the drivers, they no longer drive, and so therefore did not renew their driver's license.
Madam Chair?
Senator
Are you
Edwards.
saying just because your driver's license has expired, you have not necessarily expired?
That's one way of putting it, yes.
Or
Senator Chase.
Madam Chair,
Senator
we'll get
Chase.
it right. I'm waking up. The coffee's kicking in. Just a quick question that I had of the patron here.
Yes.
With our Virginia driver's license, how often are they reissued?
It varies. At one time, I think it was 10 years. I think it's now 8 years in most situations. So it's, I mean, obviously, there are a lot of people who have licenses, and they may not look quite like they did 8 or 10 years ago. The hair's been dyed, whatever has occurred.
Right.
But those are still valid.
So-
And in this situation,
Just
as long as you got someone who matches up with
Just
the
a
voter
follow-up
rolls.
question, if I could.
Senator Chase.
So we are talking about 8 to 10 years, and we're talking about, as you were saying, people look a lot differently. Like I'm thinking about my 18-year-old would probably look a lot different 10 years from now. And I think the concern is that there are situations where people's voting rights are taken away if they commit heinous crimes and those types of things. And if we're compliant with current law, wouldn't we want to make sure that we're using a current license to ensure that we're consistently applying Virginia law?
I would say two things. One is I imagine that most of the people who are in their 80s and 90s still look a lot more like they did than someone who was 18 and now is 26. So I think they're much more likely to have significant changes in their appearance at a younger age. So I think that is not likely to be the issue that is there.
So correct me if-
And I don't think that there is any significant issue as it relates to these 80 and 90-year-old people having committed heinous crimes and no longer being eligible to vote. We have systems to be able to purge from the rolls those people who are convicted of felonies in Virginia, are in prison, which is what happens in those situations for a year or more, and they are removed from the rolls.
Madam Chair.
Senator Reeves.
I'm going to try to figure out how to word this into a question for you, Senator Barker, but it's more of an example of why I think it's the intent of your bill is well-meaning, but I think it runs afoul of what the Department of Motor Vehicle requires under today's requirement for real ID and some of the other issues that we're facing with Homeland Security. And I don't mean to tread on the committee's time, but a friend of mine had a driver's license expire accidentally because he's a business owner and didn't have time to go in and get it done. He goes back to DMV with a Virginia-issued driver's license, and would you believe they wouldn't renew it because it was expired? But under federal law and Homeland Security, he had to come back and either provide a birth certificate. There was a gamut of things that he would have to do. And so I think in some aspects, it's important because they're trying to validate that information, one, hasn't changed on them. And normally you're notified prior to from DMV if that license is expired to make sure that they haven't changed locations and such. And so as people in the field have to execute based on the driver's license or proof of ID, we need to know that that's valid. And I think by allowing the expiration to happen, I don't know that says that's a real valid ID. So that's what I'm running in conflict with. Wouldn't you agree?
No, I would not agree.
Okay.
I mean, and I think the purpose of having that document there, which has been stated repeatedly when we've debated some of these bills on the floor in the Senate, is to be able to verify that the person looks like the person that they say they are. and that they have evidence, documenting that, indicating that. And I don't think that whether or not the license expired has any relevance to whether or not they look like who the picture is on those.
Madam Chair.
Senator Chase.
Thank you. I'm trying to think of how to put this into a question as well. If we have a situation where we have an elderly resident, let's say he's in his 80s and he's living at home, and then all of a sudden has some type of catastrophic event that puts them in a nursing home. However, the family's more concerned about the health of the person than they are making sure that they change their address. Isn't there a possibility that even though they are registered with their regular home address, that by being put in a nursing home, that they're no longer technically in their district? Is that a possibility?
Well, anybody can move from one place to another, and I've seen a lot of people who are not elderly that have showed up to vote in the past and still have an old license and still vote in a precinct where they used to live, not where they live now. I don't think that is anything related to the age of the person here and in this particular situation. And in reality, what works in these situations for a lot of these people is basically you just tell them just request an absentee ballot by mail and go that route rather than showing up because you don't have an ID that has is currently in effect, is currently a legal driver's license.
Madam Chair, but in
Senator Chase.
when situations like that, you typically have an elderly person who maybe not be as coherent as they used to be. Is it possible that you could also have nursing home workers to help them vote in certain precincts?
I don't think we get to make those decisions.
Okay, it is a concern.
We don't make those decisions. We do not, in effect, say anytime you send an absentee ballot out, you have to send someone from the local electoral board to go check to make sure that this person is competent to be able to vote and that they're actually voting rather than someone assisting them in a facility. I think it is insulting to say that we should deny elderly people the right to vote because we don't trust them, we don't trust their families, we don't trust their caretakers, and we're going to penalize them and prevent them from voting. Here's somebody who had voted every election, as indicated to me, for decades upon decades, and he's prevented from voting simply because even though he looks like the picture on the expired driver's license, it's not a valid driver's license, and he can't drive to the poll. And therefore, because he's not eligible to drive to the poll and doesn't have an alternative picture ID that meets the requirement, he can't vote.
Madam Chair.
Senator Chase.
But to follow up, it is an expired license and unverifiable. I mean, that's my concern. Thank you.
Is there anybody in the audience who wishes to speak in favor of the bill? Is there anybody in the audience who wishes to speak in opposition to this bill? Okay, the motion's been made and properly seconded. So, who said Madam Chairman?
Substitute motion, please.
Senator Chase.
Move to PBI.
Second.
Okay.
May I speak to that, Madam Chairman?
Yes, Senator Cosgrove.
Just very briefly, if you look at the real ID requirements that are coming out now, all of your information has to be current. It cannot be expired. Your passport can't be expired. Your driver's license can't be expired. I just got a new copy of my marriage certificate just because my wife wanted to prove we were actually married, or maybe disprove. I'm not sure whichever it was. But even in that, I had to provide identification that was not expired. So, I mean, that's pretty much a given in identification circles, and so that's why I think this is probably not the right way to go. So, thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, Senator Chafin.
Yes, so I understand what the patron's trying to get at here. I really do, but I think the issue is indicia of authenticity and indicia of reliability. And so all of those things that are listed as far as a driver's license or another form of ID, if it's expired, that's one of those indicia of reliability or indicia of authenticity that's gone. It's gone. You can't bring it back. You know, it's gone, and that's why I'll be supporting the motion to gently pass it by indefinitely.
Gently.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Senator Cosgrove.
Is that a real word? What he was just saying?
Indicia.
It's a legal term.
Indicia. You got to be a lawyer to understand that.
It's an indication.
Okay. All right, so,
You shouldn't have to be you shouldn't have to be a lawyer who knows what indicia is to be able to vote, even if you're 95 years old.
even if you're 95. Okay, the motion's been
Madam
made and
Chairman,
properly
I have
seconded.
a,
Substitute motion. Yes, Senator Edwards.
Yeah, is a one-day-old driver's license that is expired by 1 day. Is there any difference between that and a driver's license that's got one more day to go?
No.
Madam Chairman, I'd ask a similar question. If you tried
Senator
to get on a
Cosgrove.
plane with an expired passport of 1 day, would you go anywhere?
The difference here is
Well,
something
you
that
can
is
say
being
no.
done. The difference here is what is being done to protect from a security standpoint and what you're doing to, in effect, deny people the ability to vote. And
Oh,
I
man,
don't
if
think-
you
I
could
don't
just
think-
hear the conversation and how much it's devolved. We've got a bear in the woods over here. We've got a carico pull you over. Sorry, go ahead. Yeah. Senator Barker, any parting words?
Please let my people vote.
Expired or not?
Yeah, I mean, this is somebody, a World War II veteran who's still getting around, just can't drive, and so therefore he can't vote.
Senator DeSteph.
Actually,
Can
he doesn't
vote.
need to provide it because we allow folks who are over a certain age not to have to provide a driver's license when they request.
He can have other identification,
so
right? He can have
still
identification
vote.
based on his
Still vote,
address, a light
Yeah,
bill.
absolutely, he can still vote.
Well,
have
I mean,
this, with a
here's
couple of
the
my
irony to this. What you're doing is saying because the driver's license, which is officially issued by the state, has expired, he cannot vote. If he's able to get somebody to take him down to the DMV to get his picture taken, he doesn't really have to provide any information of consequence. It's not like Real ID to get a picture that is simply to be able to vote. So there is a mechanism to make it so that he can vote. But what it means that he can't drive down there because he doesn't have a valid driver's license. So somebody has to take him down, go through the process there to have a picture taken. And I had to do that with my mother-in-law because she had an out-of-state driver's license. So what you have is we have set up a system that can help people, but we made it so complicated, many people at that age are not going to be able to do it to comply. And in effect, what we are doing is we're disenfranchising many of our elderly people.
Okay, the motion was made and properly seconded. If I recall, it was gently, it was the motion to PBI. All in favor, please vote aye. Did I vote? I have one more.
As 8:06.
Senator Chafin.
Senator Barker, I've never touched the voting pad more gently.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. So
It was gently.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Senator Barker. Senator Lewis. I'm sorry you had to wait so long.
In many respects, it's safer here. Madam Chair, I've got two bills, hopefully fairly straightforward, that we can knock out for the committee. 1564 is the first in number.
Okay.
And it
Committee,
is-
direct your attention to Senate Bill 1564, signature petition regulations.
And there is a substitute, Madam Chair.
Okay. The substitute has been moved and properly seconded. All in favor of adopting the substitute, please say aye. Okay, now the substitute is properly before us.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, the substitute, I think, is a much more workable bill than the original version, and we have run it by just recently, because it's somewhat off press state board. But it's very simple and straightforward, speaks for itself in many respects, as the chair knows, and I'm sure most of the committee members knows or remembers. We had a little petition issue in my neck of the woods, and so this seeks to address that issue by directing the board essentially to establish a protocol for not just discounting signatures when it reviews petitions, but escalating the process to, if there is suspected fraud, not just random poor signatures or something like that, but actual fraud, to escalate those cases and to the electoral board, the state board, or actually the office of the Commonwealth's attorney.
Chair,
Senator Deeds, question for Meg.
Are there other instances where the word escalation
I would point out this is a Section 1 bill, Senator Deed, so there might be escalation elsewhere in code, but for purposes of the Section 1 bill, which is really just a direction, it might be okay.
I had a question about that myself, Senator Deed.
Okay, is there any other member of the committee who has a question for the patron? Is there anybody in the audience who wishes to speak in favor of the bill? Is there anybody in the audience who wishes to speak in opposition to this bill or make a comment about this bill or further enlighten us on this bill? Yeah, Senator Cosgrove.
Thank you. I asked Senator Lewis, when it comes to a primary, you know, we have legislative district chairs, and they actually look at the petitions. Does this in any way, shape, or form infringe on them determining completed petitions?
I think it refers to the state board.
It does
Reviewing
refer
the
to the state
petitions.
board, but I'm just want to make sure there's not going to be any interference with the legislative district chair and primaries and that type of thing.
Yeah, Senator Cosgrove, I'm looking at the plain language of the statute. I wouldn't think that it would. I can't imagine that it would.
Okay. Is there, do we have somebody that can?
Is there somebody here who could speak to that?
He's a great lawyer, but I'm,
Yeah, that's
I'd kind of
outside
like to hear
my.
from somebody.
Is
from
there
the state
somebody here who
board.
can speak to that? Welcome.
She's been dreading this, Madam.
Come on up.
It's my old boss.
Oh, no.
I know.
Old? How old?
Isn't
How
that
old?
fun?
How old are you?
Old.
Old.
Driver's license expired?
I don't know. Probably. Madam Chairwoman, members of the committee, Jessica Bowman, Deputy Commissioner of Elections. To answer the senator's questions, parties are allowed to check petitions in whatever way they deem necessary. This would direct the state board on their petition regulations, and those only apply to petition signatures that the registrar or sometimes elect staff to help out. That's how we check them by regulation, but the parties are free to do whatever they wish.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thanks, Senator.
Yes.
Okay, is there any other discussion? Any other questions?
Madam Chair, I'd like to advise you that the council advised me that the word escalation appears in the code 10 times.
That's unbelievable that she was able to glean that so quickly. Thank you, Senator Deeds. Thank you, Meg, for that quick search of the code. Well, 10 times. Maybe 11, maybe not.
Second.
Move to report, second. Okay. Motion's been made and properly seconded to report Senate Bill 1564. All in favor, please vote aye.
Ayes 14, no zero.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I thank the committee. I've got one more measure in front of you, and that's 1571, Madam Chair.
Okay, go right ahead.
And this one, Madam Chair, is democracy in action. This came from a letter from a military wife about some issues that she had encountered in trying to register to vote. And understand the committee will see there's an impact statement, there's a fiscal impact. So I think what I'm really trying to do with this at this point is start a discussion and put this on the committee's radar screen. I did not anticipate the fiscal impact being that significant, although you will see in the fiscal impact, delayed implementation actually would reduce it by an unspecified amount. But I understand that there is no budget amendment in there for this. So I just want to make that clear to the committee, be upfront with you about that. But just to let you know what this young woman apprised us of via her letter, she's lived in Norfolk, and I'll just go through the letter, hit the high points, won't trespass on your time with it too much. Lived in Norfolk for 2 years. Since living in Norfolk, they've actually moved homes 3 times and needed to update their voter registration each time. They don't have state of Virginia IDs, and they have out-of-state licenses. And as a military family, they don't change their licenses because they're forced to move often. I was told the only way to update my voter registration was to go downtown to City Hall in Norfolk. This presents a barrier to voting for my husband and I. We both work during the day and can't make it to City Hall during business hours to update our registration. It is my belief the process of registering to vote should be made more accessible and easy for members of our armed services. And so that's essentially what this bill does. As you can see, the bill requires the Department of Elections to enter into an agreement with the U.S. Department of Defense to facilitate voter registration by electronic means for military personnel. And that's what we do. But it does have a $780,000 fiscal impact.
Madam Chairman?
Yes, Senator Cosgrove.
I believe that Senator DeSteff has a bill similar to this, but I don't see his on the docket?
Mine's actually in rules. Madam Chair, if I may, mine's actually in rules, was referred over to rules from the clerk's desk on
did-
that. But
Madam Chair?
it is very similar. Mine is electronic voting for deployed military, where this is electronic registration for military personnel and, as I understand it, their families.
Madam Chairman?
Senator Cosgrove?
That being the case, and meaning no ill will to the bill, because I think it's a good bill, I would move that we refer this, before I do that, Senator DeSafe, has your bill been heard yet in rules?
It has not, Madam Chair.
All right. That being the case, Madam Chairman, I would move that this bill be re-referred to rules so that that and Senator DeSafe's bill can be heard simultaneously.
Oh, and Madam Chair, let me just correct for the committee. My Uber aide has informed me that there is a budget amendment out there for this thing, so.
Okay,
But
so there is a
I-
budget amendment, and then if once it goes to
Yep.
rules, then it would just get re-referred to finance out of
Yep,
rules.
and that's fine.
Is that okay?
That's great, yep.
Okay. That way they're both heard at the same
Yep,
time, and
that's
there's a
great. We can
greater
roll them in or
likelihood of
whatever.
success.
Yep.
Okay, so the motion's been made that we report and re-refer this bill to the Rules Committee, so it can be heard consistent with the other very similar bill. All in favor? Report and re-refer. Do you not want to report it and re-refer it, or do you just want to? Because I like the bill. I'd like to report it.
Madam Chairman, my motion was just to
Re-refer.
re-refer because basically Senator DeSafe's bill has not been reported and referred
Okay,
either.
okay.
That's, sure.
Okay, then the motion's to just re-refer the bill to rules. All in favor, please vote aye.
Thank you,
That's
Madam Chair.
14-0.
Thank the committee.
Thank you. Okay, last is Senator Reeves.
Wow, I'm up, huh? Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. I have Senate Bill 1244. It's a bill that adds to the list of protected voters any person who's been approved to be a foster parent pursuant to law. Madam Chair, members of the committee, this came at the suggestion of one of our general registrars, Diana Mormon, who's here to speak to the bill from James City County. If it's okay with you, I'll just have her come up and speak to the bill, and then we can.
That'd be
give
great.
particulars.
Good afternoon, welcome. It's about time we heard from you. You've been here the whole time and haven't said a word.
Oh, I definitely have opinions.
I know, and you didn't, and you somehow you managed to forbear all that time.
Yes. Thank you for listening and thank you for sponsoring the bill. I'm also a foster parent and never having children before, I now have 3 in my home under the age of 12. And we've found new challenges in the home. And once I started looking at the voter rolls and what is foyable through the offices of the registrars across the Commonwealth, any parents that take these foster children in do not have the ability currently to have our addresses redacted from the polls. So that means if we take anybody in and 2 of my children have gang-affiliated parents, if they find out what our address is, they could easily come to our house at any time and know where we live just by simply walking into the registrar's office because we are available through FOIA. So this would close that ability and remove one more step from having our address so readily available to those people. Currently, the roles or protected voter status falls for law enforcement officers, judges, and anybody that has a protective order. We can't get a protective order because oftentimes we don't know who those parents are. They may know who we are, but that is not always the case for us knowing them. That also creates a lot of animosity when we're trying to reunify the children with the parents. If we immediately are worried and go and take out a protective order, that sets a wrong tone as well. So that allows us to be protected in advance of the children coming to our homes.
Madam Chairman?
Senator Cosgrove.
I've been on P&E a long time, and we've done this in many circumstances, domestic abuse and so on. I think this makes some really good sense. Those folks that are taking in foster children, are special people to begin with, but in order to add in this added layer of protection, I think is probably a really good idea. So if there is no opposition to the bill, I'll be willing to make a motion.
Okay. Okay, the motion's been made and properly seconded.
Is there any opposition?
I was just going to quickly ask, is there anybody in the audience who wishes to speak in opposition to this bill?
And I would move to report the bill, Madam Chair.
Okay. Motion's been made and properly seconded to report Senate Bill 1244. All in favor, please vote aye.
Oh, sorry. Wrote the wrong bill.
Ayes 14, no zero.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I think the last bill we have is.
Senate Bill 1250.
Yes, ma'am, and I think Meg has some line amendments we need to introduce. And I would so move those amendments.
Motion's been made and properly seconded to adopt the line amendments. All in favor, please say aye. Okay. The bill as amended is properly before us.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, this bill is at the request of the general registrars. And what's happened, they noticed many of the registered voters that were requesting absentee ballots in which they requested that the registration be transferred to a different locality before the registration deadline. And then those voters may have voted in a different locality. So rather than go through Veris and talk about all that stuff, I have Dr. Wheeler here to talk a little bit about it, and some other folks can kind of help me with because Madam Chair, I really don't understand Veris at all. It's not my forte, but I'd be willing to hear from Clarabelle Wheeler that would probably help kind of understand why we're talking about freezing those absentee ballots so they can't be sent out.
Okay, come on up.
Madam Chairman, members of the committee, I'm Clarabelle Wheeler. I'm the Vice Chair of the State Board of Elections. Thank you, Senator Reeves. This bill was suggested by several registrars, some of whom are here today, and because they do the work, they can probably explain the intricacies a lot better than I can. But this bill is a very straightforward, simple fix for their problem so that when someone receives an absentee ballot, their registration cannot be moved to another locality in an easy fashion. So,
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Finally, we hear from you. You waited till the very last bill.
Good afternoon. I'm Kirk Showalter, the General Registrar for the City of Richmond. The situation is really affecting those people who apply for an absentee ballot between day 45 and day 21 of the election, and those that apply through the mail. Under current processes, if somebody goes and votes in person during that time and then subsequently changes their registration, you can't process that because they voted in person. You can't pull that ballot back. But persons who have voted through the mail, they've been mailed a ballot, they change their registration to another locality, that will cancel that ballot that's already gone. So the voter votes the ballot thinking they voted, then doesn't know that they need to go vote on election day in their new precinct, and the ballot won't be counted because their registration has been transferred. So this is an effort to not disenfranchise our voters. And in the city of Richmond, I have 3 colleges and a community college, and I see a lot of this happening with the college students a lot. They will go online to DMV to update their driver's license to back home, but they're registered in the city or vice versa, and I've seen numerous ballots canceled. So this, we thank the Senator for introducing this. And we hope that it will be, I have not had a chance to look at the amendments, so I cannot speak to them, but that is the situation that the bill is trying to address.
Great, thank you for the explanation.
Oh, go ahead, I'm sorry.
members of the committee, I would offer additional information on this bill. I discussed this bill at length earlier and then with the amendment with a new member of the EAC and former Secretary of the State Board of Elections, Don Palmer. And we've gone over this at length. And he also supports this bill.
Madam
Thank
Chair.
you. Senator Eben.
I apologize for being out of the room during your presentation, Senator. I meant to talk to you on the floor about this. This is the, on 1250, I was told that the National Voter Registration Act, that this could violate it, that it says that any valid voter registration application submitted 30 days before an election has to be accepted. And I have their website and some notations on it. I don't know if Ms. Wheeler or anyone else is familiar with it in the room, because I've got some citations from it.
Yeah, go ahead.
Madam Chairman.
Yeah, go ahead. You can respond to his question,
I didn't
please.
know whether he wanted to give citations before we responded or.
Well, I mean, I have the code citation. It's Section 8A1 of 52 U.S. Code 20507, National Voter Registration Act. And I have a link, but it basically says, does Section 8 impose a time deadline on states for accepting the registration applications and registering applicants? And it says they must set a voter registration cutoff for federal elections of no more than 30 days before the election. So does that apply here? Does that make sense to you?
Madam
ahead.
Chairman. I think it's a little bit askewed in that we are talking about someone who is this bill addresses someone who is already registered in Virginia. You're not preventing them from registering. They're registered. You're just delaying their transfer to another locality within Virginia. And I discussed this with former Secretary Palmer, now member, as I said, of the EAC, and he did not see any problems with this, and he is very well informed on in VRNA. And I would also say that part of that bill, that law, was written so very long ago that a lot of our absentee voting and extended periods when we can vote, all of those have, not all of them, but certainly a number of them have changed markedly since that bill went into effect. So sections of the numbers may not be applicable now.
I mean, the code hasn't been repealed. It basically says that for 30 days before an election, you have to be able to register and
Well,
go ahead.
Madam Chairman, in Virginia, we have a cutoff for voter registration that's less than 30 days.
Okay, maybe it was absentee, but anyway, I'll let it go.
Okay, Senator DeStefano. Okay. Is there anybody else in the audience who wishes to speak on this bill? Okay, Senator Steff made the motion. It's been properly seconded to report Senate Bill. Oh, sorry. Well, the commissioner would like to say a few words. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chris Piper, Commissioner of the Department of Elections, and the administration opposes the bill.
Okay.
Move to report.
Okay, the motion's been made and properly seconded to report Senate Bill 1250. All in favor, please vote aye.
Ayes 8, noes 6.
Okay, the bill reports. The last bill we have is Senator Eben. It was very embarrassing that I was texting you to see if you were coming and you were already here. I apologize. Shows you how tired I was, but it also shows you that I care. I was like, where are you? You're the last bill. Hurry. Do you want someone to present it for you? And then I looked over and he magically had appeared in his seat.
Well, I'm glad I made it because I've got some witnesses who came from Charleston for this bill. This has to do with ranked choice voting, 1731, SB 1731, Madam Chair. It allows localities only to utilize what's called ranked choice voting when holding elections for members of their local county government, supervisors, or city council. and it has a delayed enactment till July 1st, 2020. And I don't know if everyone here knows about ranked choice voting. I'll just go over it briefly. What it does is it allows voters to rank the candidates they want from most to least favorite. This is especially helpful in multi-candidate races where there are more than two or three, like our city councils and so forth, where you elect more than one. As the first choice votes, all the first choice votes get counted, and if someone has a majority, that person wins, just like any other election. But if no one has a majority, the candidate with the fewest votes gets knocked out, and those votes instantly transfer to their supporters' next choice until a winner emerges with a majority of support. Think of it like Survivor and getting voted off the island until there's someone who's a clear winner. Winners earn a majority support, and that leads to the confidence of the voters. If you have like a 8-way primary, you want to make sure that the winner has the confidence of the voters, not that they just won with 15 or 20% of the vote. We know that candidates have to run cleaner campaigns because they don't want to offend the supporters of all the other candidates. In a ranked choice election, it boosts political participation for traditionally underrepresented groups. There's been a number of cities that have done this. We've got a state doing it now. We've seen more women and candidates of color run and win elections. And we're equipped, our localities are equipped, but what we've done in the bill is we've said that for any financial impact, and there will be a financial impact for Veris and State Board to do some programming, but they all have the cities and counties all have, or 125 of the 133 have voting systems that require limited or no modification to be RCV capable. So I have some witnesses who've come, and I hope that you'll be able to hear from them.
Okay.
Madam Chairman, may I ask a question before we do that?
Senator Cosgrove has a question. Go
Sir,
ahead.
Did you say one other state did this?
Yes.
What, Madam Chairman, question?
Senator Cosgrove.
What state would that be?
Oh, that's Maine. That's Maine, and that's new. It's normally been cities.
Maine?
Yeah,
Okay.
So far it's been mostly municipal elections around the country, and that's what this bill contemplates, not any statewide.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me. My name is Karen Brinson Bell. He indicated I do live in Charleston, South Carolina, but my background is election administration in the state of North Carolina, both for the State Board of Elections and at the county level. I work with a group of former fellow election administrators, and we've all had experience in administering ranked choice voting. I'll quickly address the question. Maine is the only state currently using ranked choice voting in a statewide capacity, but there are I believe we're now at 13 municipalities across the country that are using the voting method, and there are 5 states that use it for military and overseas citizens, and 1 city that use it for military and overseas citizens. In North Carolina, my experience there was with 2 municipalities who used it for their city councils and mayors, and then we had a vacancy election that allowed for ranked choice voting in a special election that was combined with the general election. I helped the senator with some of the information that's been provided about the capabilities. It is a proven voting method. All of the 4 major vendors, including the ones that are approved in Virginia and currently in use, do have ranked choice voting capabilities in their system, either through vote capture or with tabulation. So the ability for a jurisdiction to adopt this is certainly in place. Their ability to tabulate and report it back into the Veris system, with my understanding of how the results are reported back into Veris for election night reporting, would just be a manual entry of the results and is quite capable. Again, that's permissive. It just tells the municipalities or the localities if this is something they would want to use, that they could move forward.
Okay, is there any member of the committee who has a question for the patron? Is there anybody in the audience, any other person in the audience who wishes to speak in favor of the bill? Is there anybody who wishes to speak in opposition to this bill?
Madam Chairman.
Senator Cosgrove.
Madam Chairman, I know every election night we're all huddled around the television or whatever to see, who's winning, and as the Results come in, precinct by precinct. We all wait with bated breath. Can you imagine what it's going to be like if we got to do all this ranked, basically, okay, this person's out, the next votes run up. I just cannot think that we are ready for this. I know maybe Maine is much more progressive than we are, but that being said, Madam Chairman, I respectfully move that we PBI the bill.
Second.
Can I just address the motion?
Senator
if I
Evan,
might? And I think Ms. Bell has something to say about election night reporting, but I just want to say this is really the antidote to strategic voting. If I was running and say I'm from Lynchburg in a district that may not be Lynchburg-centric, people may say, well, I shouldn't vote for the guy from Lynchburg because it's really between the candidates from these other counties that might be more central to the district. And if that's my first choice, I should be able to vote for that candidate. And lo and behold, if the people who come in third or fourth or something, if their votes are then added on, they can get their second choice elected and have the confidence of the majority of the people. But I think Ms. Bell was just telling me something about the speed of tabulation.
go ahead, Mrs. Bell.
Yes, and I don't believe I stated, I'm with the Ranked Choice Voting Resource Center is how our group operates. So I do understand your concern. The reality is that the coding is still part of the existing system, and it's coded just like any other contest. So the tabulation's done on election night. If, for example, for mayor, if someone has, 50% plus one of the vote, then they are declared the winner, and you have the same unofficial results. If there is not a clear winner, then the tabulation takes place, and what we've seen with the tabulation software is that it takes less than 3 minutes to tabulate, and that includes for the state of Maine. Your comment that they are progressive, I will say that Virginia is far advanced in that over half of Maine's polling locations do not even have voting equipment. So some of the delays you may have heard with Maine had more to do with the fact that they don't actually have voting equipment in their polling places and what the process they had to go through for
Madam
that.
Chairman, if I might, and
Senator Cosgrove.
thank you for coming up here to help us out with this. I do appreciate it. That wasn't a shot at Maine. That was a shot at Virginia, okay? I said, election night, we're all sitting around. We're still waiting at midnight for some, 2, 3, or 4 precincts that always seem to have a hard time getting their stuff in. So the other thing is, for those of us who came from local government, this looks like a nightmare. So maybe I just need to learn a little bit more, but I'm just really uncomfortable with this, so I stand by my motion to PBI.
Madam Chair,
Senator Sproul.
Senator Cosgrove now from Chesapeake. Then if this were passed, I would have to move to Great Bridge where he lives. And that's a no-no for me.
I know some great realtors.
You see, so I mean, I understand what he was saying, that this not good because for local government, this not good for a city like Chesapeake or anywhere else. And I want to decide on that night. So I want to second Senator Cosgrove's motion.
Senator Deeds. Okay, there's a substitute motion, which is to report the bill. Is there a second?
I second it because it's
Senator-
optional for localities.
And Senator Evans seconds it only because it's optional for localities. Okay.
No one has to do it.
Okay, so the substitute motion has been properly made and seconded to report Senate Bill 1731. All in favor, please vote aye.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of
Ayes
the
4,
committee.
noes 10.
Do we go to my original motion now? Or not? I don't care.
Yeah. We can flip the vote. Okay, so the substitute motion failed. Now we go back to the original motion, which was to pass the bill by gently for the sake of Chesapeake, as I understand. Okay, all in favor of passing the bill by indefinitely, please vote aye.
Ayes 10, noes 4.
Okay, bill's passed by indefinitely. Okay, that concludes this meeting of the P&E. Committee will rise.